don't like the rock, but I'm digging steep Buscemi. A Fords ain't my bag, I'd rather drive a Hemi. Rolling through the gears, don't give me none your lip. My favorite kind of shifter is a pistol grip. Turn my headphones up, man. Nah, I'm serious, I can't hear out this headphone. Bow ties off for sissies, Mopars are the bomb. If you don't like what I'm rapping, go and tell your mom.
Drop it in the front. Quarter in the slot, fool. Waiting for the dial tone. Oh man, your mom ain't nothing. Quarter.
Beneath the fog, behind the rust, sometimes they come back. There's only one internationally recognized Mopar master, Mark Warman, joined by his friends, family, and dream team, the Ghouls.
Nobody wants to take on the stuff that we take on.
Reviving the past,
100% untouched survivor.
resurrecting the icons of American muscle,
We are the Shaolin priests of Mopar.
uncovering stories,
It's the baddest car we have here.
and restoring dreams,
The most iconic muscle car on the planet.
putting cars back where they belong. On the road.
Here we go!
Beyond a passion,
Oh, that's wild.
one man's obsession with Mopar perfection. This is Graveyard Cars.
So this is a very exciting day. I got my friend Chrome Dome and Dougie. Dougie, cameras are over there. Right around, nope, wrong direction. There you go. Hi. Say hi to the camera. Yeah, hello, cameras. Hello. We are getting ready to install the drivetrain in a 1970 Plymouth CUDA tribute car with a 392 and a 5-speed Silver Sport transmission with a Moser Dana 60 rear axle with 354 gears. That's good stuff. And a Magnum Force K member.
The car that Doug and Royal are installing the drivetrain on is a 1970 convertible Tribute CUDA. It's part of the Three Amigos cars that we introduced a few seasons ago. So things are moving slow at the shop, but this one is getting close. Let me just take a minute to catch you up on the Three Amigos cars. The Three Amigos are three friends that went to college and became commercial airline pilots. All three of those gentlemen have commissioned a car here. So Jeff, Jeff, has commissioned us to build a 1970 Roadrunner. So when this car is all finished, it's gonna have a Hellcat crate engine, a 6-speed Silver Sport manual transmission, and a Dana 60 rear axle. The front suspension is going to be a Magnum Force transformer with coilover shocks. So the car that Mark selected for this is an actual 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner. The car is really rough, missing the original drivetrain, really rusty, but it's still an original Roadrunner. So since acquiring the car, we have disassembled it completely. We cut off all the rusty panels, and then we sent it out to be chemically dipped. So the car is back here at the shop, and it's going to require an enormous amount of metal work. Because this car is so rusty, we're considering doing a floor swap from a four-door like we did on a 1970 GTX. So whatever we do to get to the finish line, at the end of the day, this is going to be a beautiful 1970 Roadrunner with 700 horse.
So another car in our trio of Three Amigos is a 1968 Charger belonging to Pilot Tom. Like, ground control to Major Tom. So for this vehicle, Mark was able to find a genuine 68 Dodge Charger as a donor. When we got this car in, it had fresh paint on it. It looked good from 20 feet away, but once you got up close, it didn't look so good. Once we got the car disassembled and back from the dipper, we had a lot of work to do. Shane has been working on this car for a couple months now, and he's got it just about ready for the mudroom. A lot of panels had been replaced on it previously, but just not correctly. So this drivetrain is a lot like our other drivetrain that's going into the other Pilot Jeff's 70 Roadrunner. It gets a Hellcat crate engine and controller. It gets a 6-speed Silver Sport manual transmission, a Dana 60 rear axle, and the Magnum Force transformer front suspension. I'm looking forward to seeing all three of these cars done and lined up for the Three Amigos.
Okay, so the last car in our trio of commercial airline pilots Mopars is the little 1970 CUDA Tribute convertible car. It's the car right now that Doug and Royal are installing the drivetrain on. This one belongs to Pilot Jeff, which is spelled Geoff. We also have a Pilot Jeff JEFF, so just not to get those two confused. Now, this little car came to us as part of a big package deal I made to restore the 1970 CUDA. If you guys recall, recently we delivered that car, 70 CUDA, 446 barrel, 4-speed, beautiful car. That's home with its owner now, very happy. The cars that he traded in towards that is a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda Grand Coupe convertible, B5 blue. We featured that a few times. In fact, all these cars went out for a drive at one point in Graveyard Cars because they were running, driving cars. The little blue car, we ended up giving it away at the Little Creek Casino up in Washington. We were at a car show a couple years ago. They asked us if we'd want to be part of a giveaway, and so we were. That was a fun event, always. That's the one where we got kicked out because Alyssa and Will were intoxicated.
Man, fine first gear, let's go. He's only into an automatic.
And we never got invited back. I just would like the record to show that.
I'm what?
You're a joke.
I'm a joke. I'm a joke.
Very loud. Alyssa gets very loud when she drinks.
Then we get out here and I have to find you and you make me go halfway across the resort because you didn't play a little joke like, oh, I'm just kidding, I'm leaving you, let me go around the corner. No. You go the full mile. I hate you.
Pilot Jeff, GEOFF, has the little 70 red car that you see in the video there. Very complete car. It had a 1972 340 in it with a 4-speed. Originally, the car was a 318 with a 3-speed manual. It was also originally, it was a manual convertible top because on the 70 and 71 Barracudas and CUDAs, having the power convertible top was an option where the standard one was a mechanical fold down like the old European cars would have had. This car was a running, driving car. It had already had a lot of body and paint work on it. We jumped right onto it, got it disassembled. This car, when it's finished, is going to be a 392 crate Hemi with a 5-speed Silver Sport transmission and a Dana 60, along with the Magnum Force transformer front suspension. Just one quick note to make is when we're putting these Magnum Force transformer front suspensions on, there are a few frame modifications we have to make. Not a lot, especially if we're putting it in with the 392 crate Hemi. We learned early on in the 2016 when we did the SEMA car, the green one, that the alternator will hit the pinch weld, if you will, of the right-hand frame rail just in front of the shock tower. So now we just cut that back, weld it solid so we still have our integrity, and now it'll clear that barely, maybe by 1/4 of an inch, but it clears it. The other thing is the upper control arm bump stops have to be relocated from their original position to where the upper control arm now lands at the 0 point on there. So you don't want the upper control arm to be off to one side or the other because it's an acorn-shaped upper control arm bump stop. Modification-wise to the frame, that's about it. There is a little bit at the back where the transmission goes into place, but we'll talk about that as they're putting the transmission in it.
Coming up on Graveyard Cars, Mark and Will fill us in on the body and paint for this 1970 tribute Hemi CUDA for one of 2 Pilot Jeffs.
Just the worst welding I'd seen in a long time.
After that, Doug and Royal are ready to begin the installation of the drivetrain. But how far will they get when Mark leaves them to their own devices?
Where's the rear end? I don't know.
Find out when Graveyard Cars returns.
Now, when this little car came back from the dipper after we disassembled it, it was a pretty solid car. It had some previous repairs done to it that needed to be cleaned up, like the crossbar where the convertible top motor would normally mount if it was a power convertible top, which, by the way, we are converting it to, had been, for some reason, cut out and put back in, and just the worst welding I'd seen in a long time. A couple of the floors on the car had been replaced, which were good panels, looked like used original panels maybe back in the day, but they just needed some major cleanup on them.
So once all the metal work was done and we double checked it and everything looked great, we sent it right out to the mud room for Michael to start on it. Michael's been here for quite a few years now, and he's my #1 guy, and he does a great job.
See, a 70 to 74 Barracuda has what we, at least in street terms, we called a slab side. It was a big, long, flat side. Yeah, it had a style line down the middle, but it seemed like a really long, flat panel. So we called it the slab side, where the Challenger, of course, has the hip line to it that goes down the middle of it. The Barracuda really isn't flat. It just appears to be flat. It actually has a convex to it both directions. Then when it gets to the style line, it dips in at the wheelhouse, where in front and behind the wheelhouse, it still has the convex. There is a lot of shaping. He has to create the lower style line, and he's using mud, he's using a filler product on it, but it's very, very thin when he's done. We have that lower style line that has to be completely finished all the way to the vanishing point where it meets into the bumper opening for the rear bumper. Then he reverse masks that, and he can do the upper portion of it only to the style line. We have to have solid, crisp lines, just like in traffic. You have dotted lines. These are imaginary dotted lines. We have to create each one of those planes individually, then blend them all together. So you get the bottom part of the front of the wheel of the quarter panel, the bottom part of the back, you get above that, between that and the side styling line, then to the top, then blend all those together, and at the same time, they have to flow perfectly into the door and the fender. Michael's been doing it a long time. He's got these CUDAs down to a science. That's why when you look at that car, it's absolutely stunning and perfect, and all the lines are great.
If you look down the quarter panel, and you look at the style line, you'll see right above the wheelhouse, there's a little reverse curve. And that takes a lot of work to get. So when it comes to Michael's job, it's kind of like a sculptor. While it's not thick and we're trying to build something up, it's just making the style lines match from the quarters to the doors, to the doors to the fender. There's a lot of work that goes into that, and he does a great job at doing it. So this car is going the FE5 Rally Red. Gorgeous color, beautiful red. We were able to do this in our concept single stage. So once we did all of our final sanding, we were able to blow the car apart and do all of our jamming of our doors, fenders, deck lid, and hood. Once all the jamming was done, we put the car back together, reset all the gaps, make sure everything looks great. Then at that point, we're able to paint the car. As you can see, after the color sanding was done, this car is absolutely gorgeous. We did our normal 4 coats of single staged. We wet sanded it till it was smooth and then buffed it out into a glass finish. Now this is cool. After the paintwork was all done, I grabbed my son Brody, we put the car in the booth, masked it up, and I was able to show him how we're using our new second skin undercoating on this car. So I'm teaching Brody how to do the undercoating so that way he can take over. Make sure you get a hand underneath it too.
I'm getting there.
Okay. Why is your arm shaking?
Because it's 100
Hold
pounds.
on.
Dude, your face is the color of the car.
That's not 100 pounds. The reason you're shaking like that is because you're like your old man. You guys don't work out. You don't take care of your bodies, your vessels. This is a temple, man. You can't defile your temple every day with alcohol and snacks all the time and not work out. Okay, coincidentally, just to show, I work out 3 days a week. This is a bucket of undercoating right here. All right, it's about 25 pounds. All right, you see me go like this here. There's no shaking, there's no nothing. It's nice little simple pour, nice little simple pour. It's nothing, okay? Doesn't weigh anything.
This is ridiculous, folks. I'm sorry you have to see this. Mark throwing that bucket around like it's heavy. There's nothing in it at all. That's just another way for him to make me look bad.
Like that, Mary? Huh?
Is that enough? No, it's not a full bottle.
At the end of the day, it's not about how much Mark can lift or how much Brody can lift. We're trying to show you guys how to undercoat a car. So this system we're using now is a little bit different than what we used before. The stuff we used before was very simple to use because it was in a drum, had a pump, you just rolled it in and sprayed. The problem was we weren't really happy with the finished product with that system we were using. With the second skin system, we're going to get a pump and get a whole setup for it. We don't have that yet, but the finish is a lot better. It's got an overall just the look we're looking for. And this stuff dries up like a rock.
So you have to move kind of fast?
No, not really. It's a lot more rigid than the other stuff we used to use. So the old system worked great. It looked good, did its part. The only problem we had with it is it takes forever to dry. It stays wet for too long. So if you put a car back on a lift, it would kind of smear a little bit. Where our new system, after like 2 days, it's hard as a rock. This, you can't smear anything once it sets up. All right. We need more.
Let the record show that he brought this in on a dolly because he couldn't lift it, so I'm over here lifting it by myself. Put that out there.
Hey, it's getting lighter though, right?
Nope. What if we took the lid off and you just scoop it out?
So Brody and I will spend like the next hour getting all fine tuning all the little stuff and whatnot. Let this car sit overnight, unmask it, and then we take it over to assembly. It'll be dry, hard as a rock, and the stuff works great. So with this system, we actually put 2 coats on to make sure it has great coverage. So with this, it sets up great. It's got a great look when it's dry, and it's hard as a rock.
Okay, what are we up to?
Well, Mark wants us to put this rear end in. I thought Mark was going to help us put this rear end in, but
Where'd he go?
where'd he go?
Cole, I'll tell you where I went. It's part of a test, okay? I cannot be everywhere here anymore. It's impossible. Normally speaking, here's what happens. These guys are getting ready to put a drivetrain in. We want them to look smart and look like they know what they're doing on TV. So old Trey goes out and he gets all the parts and all the pieces and he lays them out like a little assembly line, and all they have to do is pick up the part and put it on. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to leave them to their own devices. You'll see how it works out. They have to find the part, they have to select it. Everything is labeled, all they have to do is select the right ones, which a big part of that, of course, is reading.
Where's the rear end?
I don't know, but let's put our shocks in first. Maybe it'll show up.
Magically?
Magically.
This car is part of the 3 commercial airline pilots, the trio, the Three Amigos. And what we do is when we have a situation like this where we have 3 people bringing us a car collectively as one, is everything is labeled with their first names and the correct spelling for it. So we have Pilot Tom, who happens to have a 1968 Dodge Charger, B body. We have Pilot Jeff, Jeff, who happens to have a 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner, B body. And we have this Jeff, Geoff, which happens to have an E body, which is our 1970 Plymouth Barracuda. Different cars, different applications.
Sometimes that undercoating makes it a little problem, huh?
Yeah.
Front to back?
Yep.
So I don't remember.
Well, you do this so often every day, right?
Don't do it every day anymore.
Let me
That's
try
the
this, Royal.
problem.
Royal, let me try this. Little nose pick here.
Nose pick.
Little nose pick.
I'll take your word for that.
Alignment tool, okay?
Alignment tool.
What? Did I poke a hole in the gas
Nope.
tank?
I'll save you guys a little trouble here. They're just having a little trouble with those rear shocks. They can be tricky. Oops. They have the shocks in. Everything came out fine. They are moving forward to installing the rear axle assembly.
There you go.
Beautiful. Okay. Step 1, shocks in place. Now let's go find the rear end.
Okay.
All right. So what, he put the brakes on? Now Mark has been super busy lately, and that's fine with me because it means he stays out of my hair. But I admit, I do like it when Mark lays out all the correct parts for us ahead of time so we can just put them on. But the good news is I had Royal help me pick out all the right parts so we could put the drivetrain together. Well, I admit it took us a little longer to round up all the parts without Mark's help. It was a lot more peaceful and harmonious without him. There we go. Oh, what kind of stuff scares me?
I was going to say that was
I'm a
going to
little
go.
jumpy.
Don't be scared, Doug. We're trained professionals.
Trained professional. Okay. All right, I'll get back in position. And I can lower the car, Royal.
I think you may want to just a little bit. Are you in? I can't get.
Then I can lower the car a little.
Okay.
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 Let me grab the end.
There we go.
You got it? Yep. Nice.
Better to be lucky than good, I always say.
Well, I'd rather be good than lucky in this particular case. See how Royal is successfully installing the 4 nuts on the leaf spring hangers where they go into the rear leaf spring hanger support? Nice, right? Pan over to Dougie on the other side, who happens to have a 3-foot pry bar in his hand. Why, I've never needed a 3-foot pry bar before. You'll see why.
Push down on the back of the spring. There you go, there you go.
Yeah. Twist it, push it. Yeah, why?
Wow, I think you hit that angle on those just right on. That's amazing.
Sometimes I get lucky.
The guy's got the leaf spring hangers in with a lot of work. See, I would, just for the record, that's where I would have stopped and said, what's up? I'd say, why are we having so much trouble getting the hangers into place? Because something's wrong.
Oh boy. Okay, Royal.
Oh man.
I know.
He greased these all up, didn't he?
Yeah. Mark always complains I never put enough grease on anything, right?
Well,
where's he at today?
You did this time. And that's okay.
One time Mark's not here.
But not our boys. Our boys decided that after getting them into position to lower the car down and make the connection at the rear. This is where the rear portion of the leaf spring goes into a shackle, and that goes into the frame of the body.
It's actually going really well. With everything being prepped beforehand, it just goes really smoothly. We can do it in a matter of minutes instead of hours, like it used to take us on our backs in the gravel.
I'm gonna get a big pair of channel lock pliers.
I'll fix it. Perfect.
Got it?
Popped right in.
Bigger hammer, bigger pliers.
Yep.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
You hold it there. Oh. Yeah. Some went wrong.
Houston.
Is that the right rear end? Is that the rear end? Is this the rear end for that, or is it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. It's not Mark's rear end that he had sitting out there taking pictures of?
No.
What you don't see is that Cue Ball and Einstein selected a B-body rear end, which is 2 inches narrower than an E-body rear end from every standpoint, including the width of where the leaf springs bolt. Where did they find a rear axle for a B-body that looked just like it? Well, at a glance, they do look like it from a B-body to an E-body. Remember when I mentioned how we used to label them Pilot Jeff, G-E-O-F-F, and then we had Pilot Jeff again, woo, and it's J-E-F-F. They grabbed the rear axle assembly that's built out for Pilot Jeff, J-E-F-F, 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner, which is a B-body, is 2 inches narrower. That dog will never hunt. I can assure you of that. So what they did while we were cut was remove the axle that took so much time to put in and got the correct E-body axle underneath it. Now, I would like to say that I was asked specifically by Royal and Doug to keep that under my hat, that little error. And I agreed to do that, but everybody that knows me knows I don't wear a hat.
After the break, with the rear axle crisis averted, Mark takes a moment to go over a 1968 GTX after the car was released from the body shop with less than perfect panel placement.
That's a terribly tight gap at the back.
Will Dougie and Royal continue to manage on their own when they take on the ferocious 392 Hemi?
Oh, you all right?
Find out when Graveyard Cars returns.
What I'm looking at here, okay, is here's your front header panel. This big piece right here, we call it a header panel or a bumper filler. Your bumper would go right here. It holds your grille assembly. So remember, guys, one of the reasons I'm not able to help the guys do the drivetrain is because I have to go over a 1968 GTX 444 speed. It's a yellow car with a gold interior, an extremely rare car we introduced a few seasons ago that I was told was done in the metal shop. I was called over to sign off on it. The bodyman feels like he is done and it's ready to go in the mudroom. So what I do is I check the gaps. I'll show you what I look for and how I look for it, because if the gaps are too tight, we don't dare go into the mud shop. We have a really nice intersection here. This just came out nice. It could come out just a little bit, but this is a really good meeting. It meets here really nice, and the trajectory of this reverse curve into that looks really nice. Same thing on this side. Watch that come down real nice. It comes right into that. We have a great gap right here. So that's good, right? If that was the only panel I was checking, that'd be great. But we have to make sure all the panels have even gaps and enough gap. So knowing that's okay, we go to the hood, to the fenders. That's where the first problem is. Now I use this little jobber right here. It's a it's a 3/16 shim. That's what we want a gap is 3/16. Reason being, we're gonna fill up these ledges. We're gonna fill up these jams with paint and primer and sealers and all kinds of things. So it's going to shrink. You wanna make sure you have a nice fat gap before you get started, so when it shrinks, it looks the way it's supposed to. So what I should be able to do is take this 3/16 shim and put it between the hood and the fender. You can clearly see I can't do that. As a matter of fact, just guessing, I'd say this is probably about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit less. So we know this fender has to come out. We'll go look at this side. It barely starts to go into the ledge and then it stops right there. So that fender would have to go out. So now we have two fenders that we need a wider gap on. Well, pull the fenders out. Well, it's all well and good. What happens here on our header panel? If we pull this fender out, we're gonna open up this gap right here. Now, maybe that gap can stay and the top of the fender can roll out a little bit. I won't know that till I go down there and work with the metal guy on it. But we know the fenders have to come out to be able to give us a wider gap. That's a terribly tight gap at the back. Where the hood meets the cowl, if you look at that, there is, again, 1/8 of an inch at best. So now we know the hood needs to go forward and the fenders need to go out before they start working on it in the mud shop. This is a great example how the movement of one panel or the placement of one panel can affect all the rest of them. They set all of the adjustments on the adjustable parts. Remember, the quarters, once they're welded on, not adjustable. The trunk is adjustable, the doors are adjustable, fender's adjustable, header panel's adjustable, hood's adjustable. They put all of those peripheral body parts on in a neutral position. If the hinge can go forward 1/2 an inch and back 1/2 of an inch, they put it right in the middle. Then, once they have everything hung, they go around and they dial it in. At this point, their biggest mistake is they've got about 1/8 of an inch gap in some areas that have to be 3/16 inch of a gap. So now you take that door, that door's gotta come forward. That door comes forward from 1/8 all the way to 3/16, which is another 1/8, I think. Not that good in math. But the doors come forward. Well, now you have no gap between the door and the fender. So you have to take the fenders and move them forward. That means you have to move the hood forward. Now, you have to worry about the size of the gap between the fenders and the cowl panel. So it's one thing affects another thing, that affects another thing, that affects another thing. That's why when they're done with the metal and they initially line up all those parts, they've got to be in the neutral position so you have movement up, down, back, and forth to do the fine dial in. Now, the gap is a little too wide. Take a look at that. It fits in there, it's got a little bit of play, and I wouldn't care about that because I know that that'll probably fill up and you'd never be able to see it. But imagine now we've moved everything forward, how wide that gap is. So that would mean we have to bring the door forward. If we go back here, we can afford to go forward with this door. Look at that gap. I see all of the evidence of the sheet metal alignment on this car happening because all of the sheet metal is moved back too far. We take that door so that this 3/16 will go in there. That means it moves forward about 1/8 of an inch. This one moves forward 1/8 of an inch. This one moves forward 1/8 of an inch. Figure out what we're gonna do down here at the bottom when we do open up the fenders. When you open up that fender and bring it out, we're gonna have to bring that door out too. Right now, we've got a door that fits the rocker. If you look at that, that door fits the rocker really nicely. So, how are we going to do that? It's massage, massage, massage. I believe that as far as going to the mud shop, no way is it close to ready to go to the mud shop. The last thing that I have to check is the trunk, so I'll just do that real quick. One thing you have to take constant knowledge of is you have to be familiar with the car. That 3/16 rule works really great on all of those things out there in the front end sheet metal and the doors, but on the trunks, They are tight. If you go out back and you take a look at 2 or 3 of these B bodies, 68, 69 seem to have a really tight reveal, closer to an 1/8 inch with the material on it. So right here, I can't expect this to go in there, but I do think it's too tight. I think this needs to be a little closer to an 1/8 of an inch. So just about a 1/16 of an inch thinner than this one right here. If we come in and they run a grinder, a belt grinder along this edge and take a little bit of meat off this trunk lid and a little bit off that new quarter panel, we'll have the gap that we need. Over here, it's much better. It's really close. It would also need a little bit of grinding at the same time. And the leading edges are always huge. Look at that, you can just flop that thing around in there. But we've got good lines here, so it doesn't need to go forward. So this is the massaging a professional has to do. You can't just go by this. You have to have experience and know, because you'd have to end up cutting the quarter panel and re-welding it to get a 3/16 gap. The cars aren't built that way. We're not building them for the first time, we're rebuilding what's already there. So you take a look down the side, you'll see your quarter to your door is too narrow, your fender to your door is good, but the whole front end has to go forward. So I'm gonna kick this back over to the metal guys, and we'll just go over it one panel at a time, and they're all gonna have a reason why it looks like this, and I have to explain to them that it doesn't work. That's my job. But that's a really neat car. Okay, see you guys later.
Okay, are we ready?
You ready? We'll put this Hemi in there?
We are ready.
Ready or not.
Here we go. Here we go, yo. Right?
Yep.
Another scenario.
Okay, so right before they put this drivetrain in, I just want to take a second and talk about a couple of cool things. There's a lot of neat things when you start putting these new engines in old cars. But there's evolution too for us that we've learned over the years. That parts and vendors that we can buy things from that might make the installation easier and actually work at the end. So when we put this unit together, we're using our Magnum Force coil-over power rack and pinion front suspension. That means the things that clear it, we're not going to run factory exhaust manifolds, we want to run a header on it. TTI makes a header that actually is designed to work with Ron's Magnum Force rack and pinion. They need to know if the starter's on the left side or the starter's on the right side, all these key things, all things we learned the first time the hard way. So now we have a header that we know when it goes in, it's not going to hit or interfere with anything. The transmissions, I'm a big fan of these little 5-speeds. They're a considerably smaller unit than the 6-speeds are. This little 5-speed works great. You'll never go fast enough to really even need 5th gear, but it's there. These cars aren't meant to go 200 miles an hour like a new Hellcat Red Eye or a Demon. What I really love about the 5-speed is you don't have to cut out the transmission cross member, you don't have to cut out half of the floor and raise it all up like you do with the 6-speed. I've talked several people, including this guy, out of the 6-speed for that very reason. It'll end you up with a more solid vehicle than if you have to cut those pieces out.
Hey, this is easier than the forklift, isn't it? Right there?
There you go.
I'm going to hook up.
You gonna raise this up?
I don't know whether to raise the engine or lower the car.
Let's raise the engine.
Okay. So we're gonna hook up a little air.
See what happens.
To our little pump right here. And we're gonna pump it up. So the unit you see us using now is a little different than the way we used to do it with the forklift. This unit allows us a lot more articulation than the forklift. It'll tilt left, right, forward, backward, and it's a lot easier to just move this around so that we can install the engine in the car.
Right there for right now. I'm coming up again close to this fuel regulator. Why do they have the fuel regulator on here? Is it not going to have one in the tank?
I don't have any idea. That's not my department.
Perfect.
Still got clearance on your side?
Yep.
Awesome. Going up. Clear?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, there we go. I wasn't watching the back. Actually, it could come back a little bit now. Straight back?
Back?
Yeah.
Okay, we are against that regulator, Royal.
Oh no. We're missing it, barely.
Okay, back a little.
Well, everything's going great so far, right? You're enjoying this. The I mean, what can go wrong anyway? You've done it a million times. You got a 392 Hemi going on a Magnum Force front suspension. You got a Silver Sport transmission. Everything goes together. They all bolt into the same exact location as the factory K member and transmission cross member. So everything should be fine, right? What could possibly go wrong?
Okay, I'm gonna lower the car a little. Everything clear?
Yeah. Slowly.
Slowly. Is that slow enough?
Yep. Hold it.
Holding?
Now we can come the front over because I think we're gonna miss, oh, too far. Okay. And if we can come back.
Towards you?
Yep.
We're gonna have to stretch this car.
The car or the engine?
The car. These bolt holes are not lining up, Royal. I'm already an inch behind the bolt holes.
Oh, really?
Yep. Well, then it just needs twisted. And it can't do that either.
Well, yeah, it can. Actually, it can't until you come down some more. Can you come down just a little bit?
Yeah.
Like really slow?
Heck yes, I can do that. Here we go, yo.
Hold it. Boy, you got a nice touch on that. These go front to back.
Yep. Can't do it.
That one's in. Can't go back.
Okay, these two are good. Look
Okay.
at these two.
Oh.
Yeah.
Still to come, what happens when Dougie and Royal hit another snag during the installation of the 392 Hemi?
I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to go about this.
Can they redeem themselves and overcome the obstacles on their own?
Those are a good inch and a half off.
Or will Mark be forced to intervene?
I'll explain.
Find out when Graveyard Cars returns.
That one's in. Can't go back.
Okay, these two are good. Look at
Okay.
these two.
Oh,
Yeah.
my.
Now, the reason you see Mongo at the back of the transmission with a hammer and a pry bar and Dougie saying, uh-oh, is because I didn't lay everything out for them. I'll explain. The Magnum Force front suspension allows you a couple of options to go with when mounting the engine mounts to the block. There are forward holes on a factory crate engine that you can go into, and there are rear holes that you can go into, and they're about an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches apart from each other. We always put them in the front holes. So when you put them in the front holes, it moves everything forward so that your K-member bolts will line up and your transmission cross-member bolts will line up. This motor mount just bolts on with a series of bolts. The plate, if you unbolt it, you can slide it back. Unbolt it, you can slide it forward. In this case, what they did was they installed the engine mounts on the rearmost positions of the block. And so they needed to be able to go back more with the engine. The only way you can go back more with the engine and not have the transmission crash into the crossmember is to take those mounts and move them to the frontmost holes.
Those are a good inch and a half off.
So saving you guys lots of misery and head scratching. We went ahead and cut for the majority of it. There's a little bit of shots of him. If you look, he's unbolting the motor mount right now, and he's probably confused by it all because he didn't mark it.
I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to go about this.
And that's okay. Once he figures it out, he'll go to the other side and see what he did the first time. He'll do that 2 or 3 times, and after that, he should have the engine mount on there, and then they can continue on with installing the drivetrain, which, for the record, is a fairly easy thing to do that takes me an average of 20, 30 minutes. But, you know, doesn't make them bad people.
Oh! You all right?
Ted Bundy, you know, he was a really smart guy. He was going to law school. Sharp, charismatic, but a bad guy. Right? What about that question, Pete? That's right. What about that question? John Wayne Gacy, good contractor.
He was a hell of a clown.
He was a hell of a clown. All the kids loved him. So something really cool here is you'll notice we don't have the forklift in for this.
Ready for some more height?
Yep.
We're using an adjustable hydraulic platform
Hold it.
Good.
that you can use. You can build transmissions, I think is what it's built for originally. But anything, it has a 2,000 pound weight limit. So in this case, you don't have nearly that much weight. You can put a whole drivetrain in. Because of that platform, it's very similar to what you see at the factory. At the factory, they would have the car coming along being held up by those body jigs, and then they would push that engine up into it. This does the same thing. Now we have the articulation of being able to come down with the car with the lift or go up with that.
Hold it.
Hold it.
We also have this movement, so we can tilt it forward, we can tilt it to the side.
Can you tilt it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
It's so much more latitude, even than the forklift offered, which was much better than a stationary cart and a stationary car, and now when it comes down, you're in there with pry bars trying to get things lined up. This unit is very much in the spirit of the way the factory did it. And it's a nice, I believe it's an OTC piece of equipment that we bought a few years ago, and all we were using it for was transmission. I will give Dougie credit. He said, why can't we use it for the engines and the K-member? And I said, well, let's try it. And you can see it works very nicely.
Okay, up a little.
Yeah, up. Hold it. Hey,
Oh man, look at that.
look at that.
That's darn near perfect. That never happens.
Well, we're that good once in a while.
Okay, so we made a few mistakes. And I admit we should have known about the motor mounts. However, by the end of the day, the car came out beautiful. And all we have to do is hook up the rest of the suspension. And then we can put the wheels and tires on it and set it down.
Bring her down.
Bring her down.
The other way.
Thank you, buddy.
Whoa. I just don't want to see it go.
No, I don't either.
Mark could kill us both.
Well, we could just drive to Florida and never come back.
Not in this car yet.
Oh, we gotta have some wheels.
Yeah.
That car has wheels. We'll take that one.
Perfect.
Perfect. Woohoo! We did it.
Awesome.
So the first thing we do when connecting the suspension is to hook up the coilover shocks to the body. After we make that connection, we raise up the lower control arm and connect the lower part of the shock to the lower control arm. After that, we connect the upper ball joint to the spindle. Remember, folks, when we're using the Magnum Force coilover shocks, we don't have to use the torsion bars anymore. After that, we set the alignment by eye, as close as we can. So one thing to make note of, these are not the wheels and tires the car will leave with. We didn't have the proper tires in stock, but the car looks great sitting in the middle of the shop, and now it's ready to wheel over to Brian for assembly.